We're going to mix Country Red and dried clay 1:1. On a dome stippler, I pick it up, and I'm going to nice and softly dry brush coming from our beard and mustache area, just nice and softly, but you see how it fades right up into close to the cheek, close to the, pardon me, cheek, close to the glasses. I'm also going to add a little of that on the bottom of the ball of the nose and on this nostril. We'll put a wee bit over on this side of his cheek. And that's good for our cheeks. I'm going to strengthen up, I'm going to thin down a little of my second shading mix, and I'm going to strengthen up some creases, add a few creases, and strengthen up the creases around the eye. So it's just coming in with our second shading mix and strengthening up a little more of those crow's feet and those wrinkles. You may feel like you're already got them strong enough, and that's fine. And then I'm going to pop up or strengthen up a little bit of our dry brush highlight that we did, the light mocha. So I'm going to take that light mocha and I'm just picking it up on my lunar blender. I'm going to scuff it off on my towel a little bit, and I'm going to come in here and just kind of strengthen up those spots a little bit more. And I'll pop up a little bit more. You can tell once you get the nose on there, you get that color on there, you can see that you want to have that a little brighter. It helps to gauge it for you. We're not trying to make Santa look like he's had too much to drink, but he's been out there. So just pop that up a little bit as you like. If yours is already bright enough, then that's all good. Okay, so now what I'm going to get you to do is to take a little bit of warm white, and we'll do this right now so that we can let this dry, so without having to go back and blow dry. I'm going to take warm white and I'm going to add some water and thin it down to make a wash. Doesn't matter, a small flat brush. Then I dab it on my paper towel so that it doesn't bleed. And I'm going to come and I'm going to put a wash over top of his lenses. I'll just blot them a little bit. So a nice little wash over the lenses. Doesn't matter if you get it on your glass frame because we wet coat that as we go. There. So this gives the look of the glass. It is see-through, and that's good. So we want that wash. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to put those on right now. And we can let that dry. So I'm going to take a little of our first base coat mix, and I've got my 1/4 lunar blender. I'm just going to come along underneath his mouth, under his lip, and I just want to scuff away from there. So we're just scratching a bit of that base coat color away from the mouth. So if you look at your picture, this is what we're going to see, a little of the skin where the beard comes from afterwards. So you see a little flesh underneath the mouth. So we just scuff away from that a bit, and that's good for there. Now we're going to dry brush our lip. So we're going on to the lip. And I want just a small 1/8 dry brush, dome stippler. I'm taking my first shading mix and I'm going to just dry brush, scuff it off. And I'm going to come in the middle of the lip and dry brush a little highlight. So we've got a little highlight in the middle of that mouth. I'm going to use my lunar blender, and I'm going to pick up a little tiny bit of soft black, scuff it off, and I'm going to come from the side of the mouth, on both sides of the lip, pardon me, a little bit on both sides of the lip, and along the top of the lip, very soft, and I will come along the bottom. So you may feel it's better to turn it upside down for yourself, whatever works better. Nice and soft, just kind of scuffle on the bottom. So that gives that little tiny bit. And I'm going to thin down, really thin and inky, real fine. It needs to be nice and thin. And if you look at your picture, you can see these fine little, almost we'd call them chapped lip marks. Just the little wrinkles in the lip. They're faint, and we don't want them to be very bold. So you see it, but you don't see it, kind of thing. And I am curving as I pull these up or down, whichever way they're going. You don't go from top to bottom. The odd one could go a little further. So they're just faint little lines, barely visible, but you do see them in your line drawing. Then I'm going to take my 1/8 lunar blender. That's a nice tiny one. I'm going to pick up warm beige, just tap it, and I'm going to scratch in from this way and scratch in from this way. This is giving a highlight on the lip. This looks brighter in your picture in the camera than it really is. And something else I notice is that I have one coat, so it's very see-through inside my mouth there, but on the camera it appears to look really dark to me, and it is not. But if your inside the mouth was, if it's very solid and you can't kind of see through, it was to be one coat, then you might want to dry brush a little bit of the flesh color in there as well, just so that it has some depth to it. It doesn't look solid dark. Okay, so that's what we're going to do to this point. So we're going to go up to the hat. Now what we're going to do for our hat is we're going to put a wet coat. So when I say wet coat, that just means we're going to work with it while it's wet. We're not going to dry it in between. And a lot of times as you go, you need to re-wet your area. So I'm putting on a coat of the Napa Red. Now that's the color we based it in. Now on my piece, of course, part of the hat's missing because I'm on this little round canvas. So you will follow your photo or your pattern because you have a bit more hat there than I do. They're not watching. No, this is the record. So I'm going to take the soft black on the corner of the dirty brush, and I'll pat that in there and come along the top of here. And then I'm going to come down the back side with a little of that soft black and work that in. You can bring it down and create a couple of creases if you'd like by your tail of your hat there. And I'll just have a little up here where it would be coming from along the back. So anywhere that it dips down at the top of the hat, just going to pick up a bit more paint here. Where it dips down, that's where you would have a bit of darker shadow. So I'll put a little in there and I'll just kind of blend it down a bit. I'm not using a lot of pressure. You don't want to press too hard, so I'll skip from there over to this dent, say, where it's bending down a bit here. And I'm on a canvas that's got a lot of holes, a lot of those raised ones. So I'll just come back and shade that to smooth that out after. So I blend that down. Then I'm just wiping my brush and I'm going to pick up True Red. So the True Red I want to apply along the upper part above that crease and then just kind of fade it away by blending nice and soft. Blend it out. Now this is going to look extremely bright till it dries and it dies down. When the whole hat's dry, we'll go back and dry brush some fiery red in there. And that pops it up quite a bit, but we're not going to wait for it to dry here, and we're not going to blow dry. We'll just come back and do that later. So I'm just putting some True Red in here, blend that. I flip my brush around a bit. So it just kind of gives a little bit of movement in the hat, some ups and downs. Makes it look like it has a little bit of little bends and whatnot. Want creases in his hat. So there's our creases in our hat, and like I say, I'm going to come along here and shade to clean up my edges there afterwards. Alrighty. Okay, hang on. Okay, so we're going to take a short liner. You don't want a long, fine liner. And we're going to use black-brown mix. And I'm going to apply my lash line. And then we're going to apply our lashes by setting down the brush. I'm not trying to pull out long curly lashes. So we're just putting our lash line in by putting the tip of the liner down and press. You don't want all the lashes the same length. You want some that stick out a little fatter, some that are a little longer. Same thing on the other side. And don't go, see how I stopped shy and started shy of the end of the lash line. This one works out that he's right, the glasses will be over top a part of his lash lines on this piece that I just did. So we just put these lash lines on, and then I'm going to just take the dirty brush, pick into neutral gray, and line across. Same thing here, right in the middle of that lash line to add a highlight. This is going to help to make it look like it's rounded out. Okay, so we're going to start on our glasses by wet coating. So again, we're going to base a coat of cocoa. On our glasses. I'm going to pick up a bit of raw umber on the dirty brush, and I'm just going to streak it along here and there. Just to randomly add a little bit of dark here and there. I'm going to take and brush mix just on my palette a little cocoa and burlap together. It's just to lighten or soften, I guess, lighten and soften the cocoa, and swipe a few highlights there, and then into sand, still with the dirty brush, and just to add a couple of more highlights on there. So we're going to do that on the whole thing. I've got a little off the edge here. So I'll just clean that edge up on that little part that holds them. So we swipe along there. So I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the glasses, section at a time. Like I say, mine's reduced, so I'm going with a 0 round. I pick up my raw umber on the dirty brush, and I just streak along here and there. I'm not completely going around the whole thing. You see how, I know it's got quite a glare when it's working wet on wet here. And then I pick up the brush, I brush mix the burlap and the cocoa. And I'm just going to swipe a few highlights in a few places. And then the sand. And the sand, of course, you're not covering all of the cocoa or all of the burlap highlight, but it just ends up looking like it's a highlight on the gold rim of the glasses. So you'll go ahead and complete the rest of the glasses the same way. We're going to start with the eyebrows, and I'm using a 1/4 inch rake. This one's a Princeton, so they call them a filbert grainer. So I take and I wet my brush, and then I pick up my gray paint, and I'm going to scrunch the brush. So what that means is that I take the brush and I give it a twist right down to the ferrule. Give it a twist. That splays open the bristles so that you're able to get lots of fine little hair. Okay, so dip in water, pick up your paint, scrunch your gray, and I'm going to take the brush up on the tip, and I'm going to come in here and start his bushy eyebrows. Now you want to make sure that you're coming right on the brow. They are fatter towards the inside of the face. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm not looking for fine. I'm not pulling little eyebrows or eyelashes. We're looking for, he's got bushy, unruly eyebrows. So we have these. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to pick up sand, water, sand, scrunch. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add some sand brows. Now when you're doing this, your intention is to still leave a little of the gray showing through. And you're going to have, so I'm just on the tip. I change direction. I want some of the brows coming this way, some that way. And now I'm going to go into warm white. So wet, pick up your paint, scrunch, give it that twist, and now I'm going to add warm white to my brows. So it's nice and bushy. They're not supposed to be neat. This way, that way, with your nice, scruffy, unruly eyebrows. Then I take my liner. So with my liner, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do what I call flicks. So I'm doing a gentle press down so we get some messy looking and a little thicker. So I have these brows and they're just, I still want to see gray through, so I'm just kind of dabbing or jabbing, if we call it, and come through with the little messy little brows. Kind of some heading this way, some heading that way. You're not trying to make it look neat. If you want more gray, you can come back in with more gray. But once you get your hair on and the beard and all that on, you'll see that you may feel, oh, I've got these too white, or oh, I want to see a bit more sand in there. It's totally, you can go back in at any time and adjust them. Okay, so that looks good to me. So we're going to add some lines on our lenses of our glasses while we're letting our eyebrows dry. And I'm just thinned down with the same brush that we just used, and I thinned a bit of warm white, and I'm just going to scratch, go in the same direction, pull the same angle. It doesn't matter whether you go back the other way, but so we pull those going that angle. So we get those nice little marks that look like the reflection in his glasses. I'm also going to thin raw umber. So I thin the raw umber nice and inky, and I'm just going to loosely come in and line here and there. I'm not going to completely outline them. I'm just going to do a little swipe here and there, and it's just going to enhance the outside edge or the dimension. I'll just go a little more here. Just the dimension to the frames. So if you outline completely around them, it's going to make them look a little more cartoony. This is just going to add a little bit of depth to them. So you just take your liner, it's thinned down. And this helps you clean up a couple of your outside edges if you happen to have those, because we're wet blending and streaking. So I'm just going around. I'm going to turn it a bit so I can work on this one. And just kind of strengthen up the lines on the arm. So that's our outlining or strengthening up. I can see that I would like to strengthen up a little in here too. There. Okay, so we've strengthened that up. And now we're going to move on to our beard and our hair. So we're going to be using, if you have a 1/2 inch filbert comb, that would be perfect. My size, because it's reduced, I'm using a 3/8. And we're going to be using the same colors. So I'd suggest you get a fair bit of room on a clean palette. So we're going to start with, again, just like we did before, where we pick up water, then pick up our paint. Just a sec. Getting out more sand. So I pick up the water, pick up the paint, scrunch like we did before, and I'm going to take and start with gray. Now, I'm not looking for, so I've got these pictures. Do you see how they're filled in fairly solid? They're not all wispy for fine curls. So you want to make sure that you're taking your brush. We've got a few bits of hair that come from the top of his hat there. So I'm going to wisp in hair coming down. And I'm going to do what look like almost S's. So I'll do an S and a couple of what we'll call C's. So do you see that I'm pressing? I want to come from underneath our mustache. The mustache will go on top after. I'll do some S's, coming different directions. So you're going to continue doing that same thing. I'm going to pull hair that comes from just under the lip. So that little section that we scuffed a quickie little base coat underneath there, we want to be coming from inside that skin, not right at the edge of it, up inside. So I have a few little hair that are coming irregularly. Okay, so you see that, and that I'm going this direction. These ones come down, these fan towards this way, these fan towards this way. So that's the way the hair's growing, right? So I'll just come and I'll do these S's and C's. Little curls fill in. We are going to be overlapping with all of our colors afterwards. We're going to be bringing in sand shortly. So I want you to bring in these gray ones first. What's important is that you're not spending your time. I'm going to just turn this a bit. I don't want you to be following a row evenly, and don't come along like this. This is where people tend to go wrong. They have all these lines going directions like that. It's a long one, couple of C's. Going that way. So I'm changing direction. I'm not concerned if I overlap over top. I'm not concerned if I have sections that are filled in quite strong. This light's really glaring, so I'm going to turn that off. Does that help? I don't know. It did? Okay, so I'm just going to bring these little curls throughout, and we're going to work until all of our cream section, never mind the mustache at this point, but see how I can have it fairly dark underneath there, or some places, remember, dip every time you load. You want to make sure your paint is thinned. So dip in the water, pick up your paint, scrunch. Give that little twist. So you're going to come through and you change direction. You're not doing a complete row. It doesn't matter if some of the hairs come back this way and some are heading that way. We want these curls to be, again, like his eyebrows. We're going to call them unruly. And you can still see through. You still see a lot of cream from our sand color. Today the debate was, that doesn't look like the color of sand to me. And no, it doesn't. But we don't name it. We just paint with it. So I'm going to go through until my gray looks pretty much like that. Okay, so that's your mission. Go ahead and do that. So now we're going to go to the sand. Again, it's the same thing. I'm going to wet my brush, pick up my sand, scrunch and twist my brush, and now I'll be bringing in a few hair on top. Now my plan is not to completely follow the same direction. That's one of the hardest things to do. When you have all those other curls underneath, you tend to follow that line. If you repeat right over a couple of lines, it doesn't matter. So if a few of the curls are all going the same way, but our object here is to actually end up getting layers of depth. So our plan with this gray, if you look at your finished piece, oops. Okay, so in our pictures, here's our first that we did with the gray. Then we go to this. This is where there's sand over top. So you see that I'm still seeing gray through, and then we're going to go on with white, so, or warm white. So my goal here is to layer. So we're going to have layers of this sand, and this is giving us shadow in the background. So it's going to give me dimension. Water if I'm reloading, pick up my paint, scrunch. And you're going to work your way over your canvas. And this, honestly, it's kind of terrorizing to some people, but this makes no difference. What you're seeing here is behind everything. We're layering on top with white next, and then what you actually see in the end, or your eyes are drawn to, is the fine white lines that we're going to use our liner and apply. So you see how these ones, I still see gray through there, and that's my goal. I want to see some gray. I want to still see, when we add the warm white, we're going to say, oh, we still see some cream. Now we have a little section also, so I'm going to continue with this color, working my way down. But we have a little section, and I'm going to switch to my smaller one. It's a little bit of hair, and I'm finding that it's a little easier to control with the smaller one. So I'm using the small comb, scrunching it as well, that we used for our eyebrows. And I'm going to bring this little bit off the side of his face. But you're able to control it a little bit more if you're using the small comb. So now I'm going to go into the sand. So I've got the gray and a bit of sand, and then when we add the warm white, I'll go for that. So that's with my smaller comb or grainer, and I'll continue working with this. I'm just going to slide this over a little bit here, and I'll add some more down to the bottom. But I still want to see gray strokes through this. So like I say, you want to have some that are wide. So by wide, I can have a couple right beside each other where I get a section that looks fairly strong with the sand. Or I'll have, so like we did with our gray, we want to have a couple of places where it's nice and bold and heavy. I guess heavy would be the word. So we want to have nice and wispy. So we'll finish and continue with that, and then we'll go to warm white. So I'm going back to scrunch, wet scrunch with my paint. So we're going into warm white now. So I'll bring some little wispy hair. I'll pull a few coming out onto the face. My plan here is, again, still to see through. I want to see the other messy hair behind. The mustache is going to come on top of a lot of this, and we're going to end up seeing mostly our attention is going to be drawn to the, I'll just pull that over a little bit there. It'll be drawn to the fine lines that we put on top afterwards, the long curls. That's where our attention gets drawn to. Right now, while you're doing this and you're building your depth and your layer, you're going to feel like, oh, this is a great big mess of spaghetti. I'm doing my C's and my S's, scrunch. So we get playing with this beard. So you see, you're noticing the curves that I'm doing, but you can still see what's underneath, and you're trying really hard not to pay attention to the direction from everything. The only ones that really over here, yeah, you're going to bring these curls off the edge, but the rest of this stuff, I don't care what's happening underneath. You don't have to follow along. So your scrunch, every time you load, give that twist and scrunch. So in the finished piece, when you look at it, you can see through. You still see that cream or sand color from behind. You'll still see some of the gray from behind. If I make a section and I feel it's way too white, I can still pick up a little of the sand or the little of the gray and work back in there and put a little bit of depth back in behind. You're never going to do two beards the same. So it's nice scrunch. I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm up on the tip of the brush, and then where I want it to fill in and be a little solid, I give a little bit of pressure and press down on it. So on a couple of my, what we'll call S's or curves, we're going to press, add a bit of pressure, scrunch. Now, of course, I don't have as much beard to work with here as you do, because my piece is, again, not a square. So, nice and wispy. And so with what I've got here, I'm happy with that. I'm okay with seeing through. So you see the amount that I can see through. And I've brought it nice and wispy off the edges. But the majority of that's going to be done with our script liner afterwards. I can take, again, I use the smaller rake or comb grainer. This one, the filbert. This is a filbert grainer from Princeton. Because it's a little smaller, I'm able to control the direction I go with that. Same thing here. If I want to pull a few little fine ones off onto the face that are with this brush so that they're a bunch beside each other, I can use the smaller brush for that. All right, so we're now going to continue on and fill in the rest of the beard like that with the warm white. So for the mustache, we're going to take the same colors. I'm going to start with the gray, again wet, dip in, scrunch. But we want our hair to be coming down like so. And then it heads off like that. So I'm going to just wisp in the gray. Looks like a dirty old mess right now. You need to make sure that your mustache is coming down over where we had the beard start, right? A couple of wispies up that way. So when it comes down over the lip, you have a few hair on that. Now I'm going to go into my sand, scrunch. Feels like you're torturing that brush, but you're not. So I'm going back over top. Again, I can still see a bit of gray through. We're building our depth. And this one is coming this way. Nice and wispy. And you bring those down. We're going to have a couple of hairs coming up there, and then now we're switching, pardon me, to warm white. Again, dip in the water, pick up your paint, give it that scrunch. So I'm going to take scrunch and come back this way. And because these are not very big, they we're not going all over the place. We tend to work the colors wet on wet a bit more. My white's fading away on me. Okay, so now I have my mustache overlapping, and I'm going to be going with my script liner. So I've got this one here is a Micron by Dynasty. I use everybody going. So I'm just taking this one. It's a nice long liner. So you're going to see that now when I pull, I thin down my warm white, pick it up on this liner, you stand upright with your liner, and I'll pull a few hair coming down. So you see how now, these are the hair that I talked about that your eyes and all of your attention are gonna go to these. These are gonna shape. I'm not following anything underneath. So those, just the direction that I want to go. Remember I talked about how coming down from his mouth, it comes this way, and then we fan out on either direction. That's the only thing that I'm concerned with. And I do the same kind of thing that I talked about before with the, say, an S and a couple of curls inside. So we'll pull a few curls, come down this way, and a few swipes. Over here, I'm just going to pull it over here a bit so that I can bring these nice defined curls. So we're bringing the nice defined curls off the edge. I can bring a couple that way. So you're watching how this is shaping my beard. These are the pieces that we're going to go and we're going to see. Our eyes are going to be drawn to them. I'll bring these little curls coming over there. So now what's happening is your eyes are pulling to them, where this is so bland and it's all smushed down. Technical talk. It's bringing to life these curls above. They're just, now we just see that what's behind there is depth. It makes it look like there's tons of hair back there somewhere. And all you're looking is at these guys. You're not that all you're looking at, but this is what your main eye is directed at. Your eyes will come to whatever's light comes forward. And so this being thicker and not thinned down so much, it's still thinned, but not as much, pardon me, that your eyes are going to be able to see it because the warm white is stronger. I got up here, I can see that I want to put a little over that spot because I can see too heavy a yellow. So on my mustache, I want to almost outline the top. So that we can see the top to it. And I'll bring a few curly, as we call them, a few unruly curls. You see where you change your direction. But you see how, look at the one side of his mustache and the other side, how now you see the depth, pardon me, in there. Nice, and keep my liner upright. Most times if I can, I rest my wrist. But I'm still wanting to keep the tip of the brush upright. Nice little script liner. This one has the comfort control handle, so they're nice to work with. So you see how you're getting those nice little curls off. I'll just bring it off. I'm not trying to follow the guy ahead of it. So once you do as many as you'd like in this, pardon me, I'll go back with a couple in Snow White. These are warm white, and they do stand out because they're heavier. But if I put a few in Snow White, not very many, just a couple in Snow White, that's going to bring a few again to another dimension. It's going to bring those closer. The lighter things are, the closer to us they come. So we just pull in these little curls until you're happy with it. Remember, like we did with the S's, it's great to put a few beside each other. So you're not planning on just doing one here, and it's still creating S's and curls. So I do my S with some C's, right? A couple C's up in the top part next to it. So it fills in, but it seems to help people to think of it in S's and C's. This morning it was like I was teaching a phonics class, because you'd hear S, S, C, 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 S, S. So, and believe me, that was not my forte. So honestly, it's what you can get your brain to think about. You don't want to stress yourself overthinking, and you overthink it, and you try to follow these curls, and don't look at my picture and say, oh, she's got one there and one over here. No underneath is the same. So the more you just relax and go through with that, And some people are more comfortable if they stand up. So if you feel that's better for you to stand up over top of it, all's good. And, woo, lots of hitchhikers. So you'll carry on, do those, and I'm just going to show you the difference of putting a few Snow White on top. And I'm, like I say, a few. You don't want a ton of them. So I take and I thin my Snow White down, and I'll put a few to the front part of his mustache here. And then maybe one or two over at the end. I don't want to have a ton of the brighter. I just want them to kind of pop up here and there. You may not even notice the difference as you're doing it, but as they dry down, you will see. So it's nice and wispy. Just a few of the stronger ones here and there. And I don't want to put them just in one spot. You know, like I can put a few heavier ones down the middle, and that's going to lift it up, and that's going to make it rounded more. And it's not even something that's so noticeable that you're going to see it too much. You won't even realize that they're there or that they're any different. So I'll put a couple up here, and then I think that's pretty good. And so you see that, I go back into some warm white ones over here. You can see that you can overdo it. You can get it going that it's looking like spaghetti, but you see that you're seeing through here. I can still see my cream and my sand, creamy sand, and the neutral gray through all of this, and that's all right. Like I've got patches that I can see those. And if you look at the finished piece, you'll see them as well. They're not what your eye goes to. You really only seem to pay attention to those big loose curls on top. So now that's where we are with his beard and mustache, and I think I'm going to put a couple more right here because my eye's drawn there. Yikes. There. All right, so that looks good for beard and mustache. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my deer foot loaded, and so a deer foot is the shape of the hoof of a deer, so that's why they call it a deer foot. We use it dry. I'm picking up khaki tan, and I'm going to stipple it along this side of the brim, my left side, and I'm going to come over about a third of the way. Now I'm going to come back over onto this side. I load it up again. And you want it to be nice and fuzzy around the edge there. And I'll work about a third of the way that way. Now I pick up burlap and I come in the middle. Now the burlap is a little bit lighter. It's not tremendously different. And I work my way back this way. If we had our deerfoot wet, it would get all soupy. And it will bleed into each other. So we like to use it dry. It gives us the look of almost a sponge, a natural sponge effect. So I'm just working my way off at the end so that they fade into each other. So the burlap fades off into the khaki tan. Wipe my brush on an old towel, pick up sand, pounce it well on the palette so it works it into my brush. It splays open those bristles again. See how that splays open the bristles? You want to have, there we go. And nice and soft. A bit more color there. Nice and soft. Start in the middle. And work my way back. So my brightest section is here in the middle part, and it just fades over here. So loosely tapping this light color over here as well. And I just fade off with this light highlight on top of everything. Now I have a plan for this guy that I'm going to be adding some lamb's wool on my brim. That's totally an option. People don't have to do that, but it's going to give him such a vintage look. I can't wait to do it. I'll put pictures up on the website showing it all done on there too. And so now again, I'm going to take, here's some of my burlap here, and I'm going to pick up some khaki tan, go along the bottom of that. Now my pom-poms, a lot of mine's missing compared to yours. So we've got a partial pom-pom there, and then I pick up my sand again, pounce it on the palette, and add that nice soft light highlight. So all of our colors in here, like in the beard and everything, they're all blending together. You don't see that, but it happens. It pulls them together. So if I thought that I had too much white in an area, I can take and brush mix on my palette a little of the neutral gray and some white and kind of come in with a few softer gray lines in there to separate a few pieces. Everybody's going to be different. You might want to go in and softly shade here and there with a little bit of raw umber to tone things down, or shade under his brim. It's optional, and it's whatever you like to do. If you want to add more detail, go ahead. Like I say, for me, I'm going to be adding lamb's wool curls. I'm going to make little curls of lamb's wool, and I'm going to apply them to the brim so it looks like an old-fashioned Santa. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this and give this fellow a try. Alrighty, thanks for painting with me.